You always knew this day was coming. A sudden change in the air. A roar in the distance growing louder. Clouds that race away from you. The air raid sirens scream to life. The sky begins to burn. The unthinkable has become suddenly, irrevocably real. You've been waiting for this end since the very beginning. But relax, because today, Doomsday is just a movie, and we're here to talk about it. I've been afraid of nuclear war since I was 7 years old, and I blame television. I had a working single mom, no friends, and a TV that made for a cheap babysitter. So I watched a lot of Doomsday movies, and aside from instilling in me a crippling existential dread, this gave me a lifelong love of stories about the end of all things. Which brings us to today's Doomsday Dissection, featuring Survive, a French import currently streaming on Amazon Prime Video, about the catastrophic effects of Earth's magnetic poles suddenly reversing. We're gonna recap it, catalog its many scientific and cinematic sins, and score it on the Goblinsburg Anxiety Index, a very serious 10-point scale measuring not how good a Doomsday movie is, but how much of it is still poisoning what's left of my soul after the credits roll. Don't you touch that dial. We open on a well-adjusted French family aboard a yacht off the coast of Cuba, which in a disaster movie is the equivalent of a character mentioning he's 3 days from retirement. Julia, her husband Tom, teen daughter Cassie, and young son Ben are celebrating Ben's 13th birthday, making warm memories to cherish before fate shoves a harpoon through their collective throat. A pod of whales, clearly spooked by something, collide with the yacht and damage its engine. Satellites just fall burning from the sky, and a strange storm appears to be brewing all across the world. And speaking of which, a violent storm hits, nearly capsizing their yacht, and makes everyone aboard so violently ill they lose consciousness. This isn't a normal storm. The Earth's magnetic poles have gone and reversed themselves. North becomes south, south becomes north, dogs and cats live together, and the entire ocean, for reasons the film declines to elaborate on, has fucked off to go hang out on land. Everything under the sea drowns in air. Everything on land drowns in sea. The Little Mermaid, dead. Sebastian, dead.
It's dead, you hear me? It's dead!
And the family wakes up to a new seascape, which is to say, no sea at all. They make radio contact with a rando in a submersible who reports the ocean is coming back, fast, and will kill anything in its path. He has room for 2 aboard, and all they have to do is cross the exposed floor of the Atlantic on foot while managing dwindling resources, starving deep-sea monstrosities, and other crazed survivors. It does not go well for them. Almost immediately, they're visited by a mumbling lunatic with a harpoon and a mean-looking dog, drawn to the cluster of birthday balloons that Ben released to advertise their exact location. Heck of a job, Benny! Not to be outdone by his dumb son, Tom ignores every survival instinct evolution ever handed a mammal and walks up to the menacing stranger to offer him fresh water. Harpoon Guy expresses his gratitude by stabbing Tom in the guts and Ned Starking him in front of his wife. And so, 20 minutes in, Survive stops being a disaster movie and becomes a slasher. Harpoon Guy spends the next 20 minutes eating their canned beans and stalking the family through their own yacht. Julia sends his dog to a farm upstate, and he takes this poorly. He catches up, beats the hell out of her while her children watch, and Cassie, forced into being useful for the first time, hits him with a flare gun. This disables him but does not kill him, because the plot's not done with him. The family flees their burning yacht with no time to grieve. The 3 survivors cross the empty oceanic hellscape in the general direction of the submersible, passing everything you'd expect to find down there. Dead whales, toxic waste, and lots of plastic garbage. They shelter in a downed plane and talk about their dead dad. The movie then, for reasons that remain its own business, gives us a close-up of the teenage daughter urinating while Harpoon Guy sneaks up on her, but Julia gets the drop on him and goes full Pamela Voorhees. By morning, something has turned his corpse into lasagna, and the film finally commits to being an environmental survival epic. They build a shelter out of conveniently located plastic chairs and are promptly run out of town by a horde of crab-like deep-sea monstrosities. The plot gifts them a cargo ship for resupply, plus a handful of red shirts who exist only to die and drop useful loot, and Julia gets pincered, blacks out, and then performs battlefield surgery on herself for the second time, because this movie's one consistent principle is that mom tanks all the damage. Meanwhile, they reach the guy in the submersible, who has been attacked by lobstrosities from the abyss. The sea is returning faster than predicted, and so he sends up a flare to speed up the unbearably glacial pacing of the film. And then we are death march towards the finale on a diet of wide shots of garbage speckled nothing. But good news! They finally spot the submersible. Bad news. They have to navigate a giant fault line to reach it. And then they get separated by a rock slide composed entirely of survival movie tropes. Julia tells the kids to go on without her and turns to make a heroic last stand against the approaching lobstrosities. The noble sacrifice the movie has promised in Act 1 delivered more or less on schedule. When they finally reach the sub, Now is conveniently near death from his wounds, which means there's a seat free for Tank Mom. Cassie decides to be useful for the second time in 90 minutes and goes back for her. She succeeds! That's drama. The lobstrosities eat Now, the family buckles in, the ocean returns, and the poles revert. And the submersible somehow survives entirely intact, miraculously deposited on dry land in the ruins of Miami. Or Havana. I don't know. I don't care. Then the movie ends at the exact moment things become interesting. And roll credits. So, Survive kinda sucks, but its doomsday premise has always intrigued me and left me more than a little uneasy. Nobody expects a planet to just up and factory reset its own magnetic field. So I did some research, and it turns out this movie is even more full of shit than I originally thought. Let's start with the actual timeline. A real reversal of the magnetic field takes about 10,000 years. Nobody alive would experience a flip. We'd all experience a very slow, very boring deterioration that outlasts the entirety of our civilization. What actually happens during that deterioration is that the field weakens and fragments. It stops behaving like a single entity and breaks into several weaker versions of itself scattered around the globe, like geomagnetic schizophrenia essentially, until it settles into its new orientation. And this means more solar wind and cosmic radiation reaching the planet's surface, a thinner ozone layer, much higher UV exposure, and the cancer risk that comes with it. Satellite failures, power grid disruptions, and compasses eventually going shit-faced and going south. Animals will lose their biologically ingrained maps and are shit out of luck. And there'll be auroras at the equator. All of this has happened before. 41,000 years ago, during something called the Le Champ excursion, the magnetic field dropped to roughly 10% of its current strength. Auroras were visible near the equator for centuries. The archaeological record from that window shows humans spending a lot more time in caves and increasing their use of ochre, which was essentially a prehistoric sunscreen. So an actual reversal of the magnetic poles would not move the ocean, nor would it spell doom for civilization. It would be a long, large, expensive, cancerous pain in the ass for people and animals. Survive botches its own premise so completely that I have trouble taking any of it seriously. Which is a shame because there's a genuinely unsettling movie somewhere in here. Cool concept, botched delivery. This film could have been a unique apocalyptic thriller, but the apocalypse and the mechanism of that apocalypse was upstaged by a guy with a harpoon and angry seafood. And it's for this reason that I am scoring Survive a 3 on the Goblinsburg Anxiety Index. That's the feature. I'm Goblinsburg, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.